Welcome to the Friends of Ceredigion Museum's virtual Museum of Curiosity. Today I would like to introduce Gwenda Rowlands Rudge, who grew up in Aberystwyth in the 1950s. And today she's going to tell us about her great-grandfather's family butcher business and the Rowlands trading in meat in Aberystwyth that started over 150 years ago. So, welcome. It's lovely to see you this morning.
Hello. I am the second of three daughters of John and Gwen Rowlands, who ran their butcher's business at the top of Great Arcade Street. And when my father closed his door in 1985, he closed the door on 150 years of meat trading in Aberystwyth. It was very much a family business. My mother always used to say that she had not only married my father, she'd married the shop as well. And as children, we knew my father was very proud of his business and we were very proud of him. And we learned very quickly that it was our job to serve as well. And so we would deliver meat for him and so on. And very quickly, I learned the customer was always right. And when times were really bad, he used to say, you have to hold the candle to the devil himself.
Do you remember any characters, any of the customers who were particularly, memorable? People who came to the shop?
Yeah, I remember as a little girl, a housekeeper coming for one of the houses on Llywelyn Road, and my father, she'd asked for a lamb chop at 1 and 3. So my father, wouldn't have it already processed. He'd cut the chop off the joint and it would come out maybe 1 and 2. And she'd say, no, I want 1 and 3. And then he'd cut another one and it might be 1 and 4. And so in the end, whatever she wanted, it was cut on that side, sort of thing. So, I can remember lots of lovely customers that used to come to the shop. One lady was from Argentina, and she always used to bring stamps for me as a little girl, which I have got in my stamp album. Another customer was the theological college, and so I always remember the housekeeper there, Miss Laura Roberts. She used to ask for meat, and then I used to have to go down the steps in theological college, and she would always give me a cake to come back with. So there were lots of lovely interesting people that we met. But obviously my father, because it was the shop and it was a dangerous environment, he didn't want us in the shop.
Yes.
Apart from delivering, or I used to think at one stage that the only reason he had me was to open the farm gates, because when we went out to see the animals, I very often had to open the gate. And I was talking to another butcher's daughter, and she used to say her father used to keep driving through the gate and she would have to run and launch herself at the van. I don't think my father ever did that, but they're early memories, yes.
But it's these little details, isn't it, about people who lived in Aberystwyth, about their personalities, their little quirks, that so really sort of add sort of flavour to our memories and our history.
Yeah, and my father was very he was very professional, and we were never allowed to talk about the customers. And I can remember once coming home, and it's quite interesting because we live in the house that I delivered the meat to, and I remember going home and saying to my father, oh, Mrs. Evans has a new kitchen. And he went, shh. I was not allowed to discuss anything I saw in any customer's house.
Wow.
That was none of my business. So I was always very aware that the shop was the business, and we had to treat everybody with respect. Yes, yes. So the first things I want to share with you are the set of knives that have spanned all the businesses in Aberystwyth.
Yeah.
From 150 years ago. These were the knives of my great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
And he ran his business from a farm in Tanraft and at Chancery Castle. These knives are interesting. They are wooden with steel. They have got his name imprinted on the handles, and his name was John William Rowlands. The blades of the knives signify that they were purchased from a butcher's sundry in Cardiff, which was quite unusual because in later years, Victorian times, butchers tended to get their knives from Smithfields in London, and they tended to be from the Rushbrook firm.
Oh, okay.
I've included the spring balance there, but interestingly, when my little sister was born, if my mother couldn't get to the clinic, my father used to hang her off a nappy that he had tied, not the nappy she was wearing, I have to say, and he would wait to check that she was progressing as she should have done.
Oh, how delightful.
Yes, yes. So after William Joel Rowlands, who had, Joel William Rowlands, who had the butcher shop on his farm in Tanraft, his son, who's in the picture here, took over the business.
Right.
And he had this business at 9 North Parade. He started his business actually by walking to town with an animal, and he promised the farmer that he would pay him on his return.
Right.
Nobody would buy this animal. And so he took it jointed to the lead mines in Aberystwyth, made a huge profit. Apparently, the meat wasn't as tough as it looked, and the miners asked him to return with his meat. And so from there, he started rather a large business. And this is him in Aberystwyth displaying a Christmas meat display. And he was helped by the fact that there was a slaughterhouse at Smithfield Row, which is now Park Avenue in Aberystwyth. This is a picture of the slaughterhouse that was still in existence after the war, World War II. My grandfather is on the right-hand side picture with the bowler hat on, with a cross above his head, but that was, and he would actually advertise in the local paper for people to go to Smithfield to look at his animals. It says here that you can see at the new slaughterhouse next Tuesday, prime Welsh mutton, bacon, pigs and porkers. This show taken all together is the most excellent one. So he was advertising initially for people to see his animals at the slaughterhouse as well as his shop. And then he would also have customers coming to buy meat from meat that had been raised in the local gentry estates. So the advert, which we've just seen, showed that he had meat in from the Prices of Gogerthan. He had meat from the Powells of Nanteos, the Lisbons of Crosswood. They were all supplying my grandfather, and he was very proud to say this. As time went on, the knives were passed then to my father, but he traded almost in the same way as my great-grandfather had. He had his shop display, although the shop now was a closed shop because the butcher shop at North Parade had a metal shutter that was pulled up and it was exposed to the street with health and safety regulations. During the 50s and 60s, you saw shops being closed up. And then he had the shop at Ceredigion, and he would display his meat there, use the slaughterhouse. And I can remember as a little girl running from Alexandra Road Primary School down Park Avenue to Smithfield, where the shop van would be waiting for us. And then we would go and visit the farms for him to see what he was buying for the shop for the following week. So he knew the farmer, he knew the animals, he knew the husbandry that went on, and he was very assured that he would be selling quality meat.
I was just going to say, isn't it an interesting observation that people had that relationship with the food they were eating, and they could actually go and see the animal
Yes.
that
Yeah.
they were going to eat. Because I know if you go to a restaurant, you know, you can sometimes choose your own fish, but the idea of being able to actually see an animal that you're prepared or you know is going to be prepared for you to eat is quite it makes it real, doesn't it? It
It
makes it real,
does.
that relationship. And I just think what an interesting thing that we've lost in
It is.
not having that contact anymore with
Yeah.
farm, you know, food that's being given to us. And I think if we could bring back the relationship of the, you know, the food from farm to plate,
Mm.
people would have a much healthier understanding of where it comes from and what they're putting in their bodies, and having respect for it, you know. Because
Yeah.
what I wanted to ask you was, what kind of smells can you remember from those days of, you know, being in the shop or being in the van or going to the farms?
Yeah. You know, the smell of raw meat has never left me. You know,
Yeah.
and in actual fact, when I went to clean the holster for the knives,
Mm.
there was a faint smell because they'd been kept in a spice box that my father used when he was making sausages and such like. And so, you know, it depended when you went to the shop what you smelt. So, you know, for example, you'd smell raw meat.
Mm.
You'd smell the faggots that he cooked.
Mm.
And you know, he used to make trays of them on a Monday and a Thursday, and the cooked meat smell. Um, you'd you know what was on the counter.
Mm.
You smelt. It wasn't watered down in any way. So you know, we used to. It wasn't so much the smell, because yes, you could smell the meat. Yes, you did smell all the cleaning agents, because the shop had to be thoroughly washed down every night and scrubbed down on a Saturday as well. So
Mm.
you had all those sort of clinical smells.
Mm.
Um, but it was the taste of things, and the taste, you know, he used to make his own sausages, tongue, pressed tongue, brawn, faggots, pate, you know, the flavors. If you shut your eyes, you knew what you were eating. You know,
Yeah.
there was no mistake of it. And he always used to say, a good piece of meat does not need anything else. It
Wow.
sells it by
Yeah.
itself. So,
Yeah.
so, you know, and to go back to what you were saying about people being able to track meat,
Yes.
now. Well, BSE changed it all, because whilst the butchers lost control of their food chain in the 60s when the slaughterhouse shut, and meat was then processed in abattoirs remotely away from Aberystwyth, so you didn't see anything.
Mm.
You didn't know where they'd come from, how old the animals were. You know, BSE changed that because then they introduced again a tracking system, and butchers now are able to advertise where they got their meat from and which farms they came from. So there is, you know, more reassurance. If you think of Rob Rattray in town, or they are able to display
Mm.
exactly where the meat came from. So, you know, you see a full circle all the
Yeah.
time. You know, the knives have done their full circle now. You know, the same with the bags that we go on to. They've
So,
done a
so the
full
shop
circle.
that we've got in Aberystwyth now, where Morgan's the butcher is,
Yes.
was that your dad's shop?
No, my
Oh,
great
sorry, your grandfather.
grandfather's shop
Yeah, your grandfather.
was where Slater's the bakery is.
Oh, okay. So that's just next. Is that next door, or is it?
Next door
Or is
one, I
the
think.
dry cleaners in
Dry
between?
cleaners in between, yes.
Right. Okay.
So that was his shop. The wrought ironwork above the window in the pictures, that's still there. The shop front is the same, apart from it used to have shutter rather than the glass window.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it is the same. And then my father, as you can see from the pictures of the bags, that the bags were not only used to hold um, commodities, they were used to advertise where the shop was. So the first one is Claire Rowlands, and that was 9 North Parade, which was the Rowlands, the butcher shop, originated in the town. I suppose it's the forerunner of the Bag for Life,
Yes.
And
And it's
well,
lasted.
yeah, 80 years, so it's not done too badly, has it?
Very good.
So they would be hung on hooks and people would buy those. And then the picture shows the bottom right, and that is the shop abont at Mill Street where my father set up his business in the 50s. That has a string handle. The original bags had no handles at all. And then on the top, there is the blue bag that my father decided when he moved to his new premises that he was going to have a blue theme running through his corporate image. So shop displays, shop signage, all that all went to blue and white. So then I've just lined up some pictures for you to see that the Llew Rowlands bag, that's the Llew Rowlands family business at North Parade.
And look at the
In
phone,
sort
look at
of
the
the
phone
third,
number. It's so short, isn't
yes,
it?
yeah, 470. And that created difficulty because I could remember when my father moved to Great Arcade Street, I think he ordered 1,000 meat bags um, and put his telephone number on it. And then the exchange added
Oh,
um,
another
62
number.
to the number. So he was
Oh,
mad with that.
I bet.
So, but this was the shop that he moved to. I'm sorry it hasn't got the front of it, but this was on the bridge. You can see the bridge on the left of Trevechan. So that was that one. And then this was my father working in his new shop and with his bag. And he was quite unusual in the fact that he always had paper bags. He was the only butcher in Aberystwyth to wrap his meat in greaseproof and brown paper.
Right.
Most of, well, all the others used newspaper surplus. So he was quite conscious of how he presented his food, but unusually he was persuaded in the 80s to change to plastic bags, which I found amazing. But he did so because he had been told they were more hygienic, that they didn't need to cut down plantations of wood to supply the paper, and they were more durable. So he converted to plastic just before he retired. So I found that
That's
quite amazing.
interesting. Yeah.
And now, you know, you look again, full circle comes round, the bag for life, you know,
Yes.
the Hessian bags that are produced by companies now are very similar to Claire Rowlands's bag of
Mm,
the 30s,
mm.
you know. So that was it. And then the third thing I wanted to share with you was the shop display pig. So he used to grace my father's counter,
Yeah.
and he is in the background with us here. And he's made of rubber. Um, so he's not lasting very well, I have to say, at the moment. He's a little bent. But he used to display on his tray oxo cubes or mint sauce or apple sauce,
Mhm.
and he was used in the window. We bought him when we went up to London. I went up with my father, I must have been 9 or 10, with him when he was choosing all the equipment for the shop. My mother couldn't come because obviously one of them had to be in the shop. So she stayed in the shop and he took me up to London. And when we went into Rushbrooks, he was very interested in the equipment and I was very interested in the pig. And what he didn't know was that we were coming home with the pig, come what may. And he actually gave me the choice of the lamb, the bull, or the pig in the end.
You went
And we came home with all three actually.
Oh,
So
you lucky
I
thing.
know. And then when he retired, he gave me the shop clock and the pig. So
Oh.
I was very pleased with that.
I
So
must
he's
say,
remained with us.
the pig reminds me of the butchers that we used to go to in Barmouth. And
Right.
we thought it was a bit odd having almost like a cartoon character of a pig
Yes.
in a window. So this would have been round about the 1970s, 1980s.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so maybe it was a fashionable thing, but I wouldn't have thought it was made from rubber.
Yeah. It's a sort of latex rubber and it's rotting. it is beginning to rot,
And in this
unfortunately.
photograph, you've got a little lamb, and then I can see a
Yes,
little cow in the other side.
yes, that's right, the bull. But the pig is actually behind my father on the counter, unfortunately. But yes, but I think because, in years gone by, they used to have huge displays which attracted people.
Yeah.
These animals actually attracted people into the shop too,
Mm.
because their children would stand
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
look at these animals. And as late as last week, somebody asked me where the pig was. Whilst we were walking on the prom, because they remember them as little children,
Yes.
passing, and so they were used just as a gimmicky thing, really.
Yeah.
But I think they are becoming quite rare, because you don't tend to have. They only had one in each shop, sort of thing, if they had them at all. But I
Yeah.
can remember my father being rather anxious because, having spent on a new cold room and sausage equipment and what have you, that I now was hankering after a pig. So I think he cut his losses and just bought it for me.
Well, I think we've done really well. Thank you for being my first guest, my
Well,
first
thank you.
exhibitor. I think we've made history today just by creating this, and I hope lots of people get to enjoy what you've shared with us today. So thank you, and also thank you for your donation, because the reason behind me doing this was because I wanted to support the museum during this, last year
The
where
time.
it's been closed. Um, I just thought doing something like this, it would engage people, it would help spread the word, and encourage people to donate and keep the museum going. And I think perhaps we can have more content added as we go along,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
record more history, and I won't have to take up too much of Carrie's storage because it'll all be in the cloud.
Yeah. Absolutely fabulous. Well, thank you for sharing my memories with me, anyway. But I'm sure there are a lot of people in Aberystwyth who have similar memories. I was looking at a picture of Alexandra Road Primary School
Yeah.
in the 50s and looking at people who were parents were in trade, and they would have their stories to tell, which is lovely.
Well, let's get the word out there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Well, thank you ever so much, and have a lovely day.
And you.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Bye.